Now, I'm just going to read through this, like I said. The last verse of the book of Judges is like an epitaph for an era. Judges 21:25 says, "In those days there was no king in Israel. All the people did what was right in their own eyes." It's an epitaph because an era is dying. Israel at that time is living under a theocracy, the reign of God. Instead of kings, God has raised up prophets and judges. However, Israel is about to enter an era of kings. It's an era with a government God did not intend for them. Yesterday was July 4th, and I wonder about the state of America. I wonder if we're running the same risk in America. What if an era is dying? An era founded on Judeo-Christian values. What if we are entering an era with a form of government God did not intend? Maybe the old Missouri philosopher Mark Twain said it best when he joked, "It was wonderful to find America, but it would have been more wonderful to miss it." Maybe it's not just America. Maybe it's a sign of the times. I was visiting with Jamie Payne last Saturday. He's a minister, so he works for the Lord, but he's also a postman, so he works for the actual government. He started asking me about the last times, an area of study that is really not my forte. We both talked about end times prophecies and the state of our nation. After a while, he referred to Judges 21:25. He said, "It's like everyone is doing right in their own eyes." Jamie has an eagle eye on both Scripture and America. And that may be what we need to consider today. What are we doing or not doing? And what is right? I'm writing this not about us as a congregation, so don't think I'm picking on you. But in an odd way, I feel like I'm writing this about we the people. The title is America, Wrong, Right, and Righteousness. What is wrong? What is wrong? We don't have any problem pointing out what is wrong with society. There are too many wrongs for us to track, not to mention opinions. Right now, we are witnessing a morbid focus on wrong. It's clickbait, quote unquote. News and social media outlets know that negative headlines get more clicks than positive ones. We are drawn to the negative, to the wrongs. And not only are we drawn to it, we're doing wrong. Whole groups are doing wrong simply because wrongs have been done. More wrongs are being done. Remember from U.S. history, 2 wrongs never made an airplane. 2 rights did. The problem is that we don't seem to know what wrong is anymore, much less evil. Isaiah the prophet said in chapter 5, "All you who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness, who put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter." Isaiah warns us that we can lose our moorings. His voice rings out thousands of years later to us. We can forget good and evil. 2 Corinthians 11:14 almost explains it. It says, "And no wonder, even Satan disguises himself as an angel of light. Evil is often an angel of light. We have all seen that great evil can be done to a victim in the name of justice. Also, on the other hand, great evil can be done to our country in the name of a victim. Maybe we have all been deceived by an angel of light. As Reverend Jamie Payne in Judges reminds us, doing whatever we think is right in our own eyes is wrong. As we see in Isaiah and 2 Corinthians, mixing up good and evil, light and darkness is wrong. Proverbs 14:34 says, righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people. We live in an age when everyone is offended by anything. Whole people groups are being offended, and they're basically suffering reproach. But reproach is only one symptom of the disease. The disease is sin. But how can we know what sin is if we don't even remember what right and wrong is or what light and darkness is? We don't want to talk about sin anymore in the public square. There's no room for sin in America. But it's a soul sickness and it's never gone away. And the sickness of sin is causing reproach, which is also translated disgrace. Proverbs says sin is a reproach or a disgrace to any people. However, righteousness has an opposite effect. What is right? We've looked at what is wrong. We as a people, or we the people, at this time in America, we have some real problems with the concept of right. These are my observations. These are not statistics. But I've got 3 problems that I think we're seeing right now around us and witnessing in America. The first problem is that we don't understand right anymore. Merriam-Webster, the Webster Dictionary, defines right as conforming to the facts or truth. Correct, the right answer. This is one of the ways of defining right. But it's really a brainy or a heady or cerebral way of knowing right. In other words, for me, if I conform or if I live according to the facts, I can just fact check everything. The answers will all be clear and I can live right. The problem is that all of the facts right now are being tweaked. You think it's just the news today. Well, maybe if we could just do away with the news. No, I want to tell you something. It's called postmodernism. It's been going on since the late 1800s. We are suffering the long-term effects of what's called deconstructionism. Let me put it in a nutshell for you. You've got your facts, I've got mine. I can argue away your facts. I can argue away what seems right for you if it doesn't seem right to me. We've done away with objective facts. We don't understand what's right anymore. That's one of our problems. Our second problem is that we have made right, the whole concept of right and truth, an individual choice instead of an objective truth. Instead, it's subjective, it's not objective. When we discover what we think is right, when we think we know what's right, even when we get to that point where we think we know, we usually take one of 2 stances in America right now. One stance is that I may have discovered what's right, but I feel obligated to tolerate other forms of right, what other people think is right. I feel like their right is just as valid as mine. I'm right, or if I do believe that I'm right and they're wrong, my stance may be, I'm right and you're wrong. I might try to explain it to you, but your choice is on your own head. In other words, right now it's not politically correct to try to correct. It's just not right. A second stance that we take is that we don't take a stance at all. In other words, it's kind of like we say, I know I'm right, but I'm not going to stand up for what's right. Are we just tired of swimming upstream? We've made right an individual choice instead of an objective truth. And on the other hand, some people become so vigilant about their individual form of truth that they are basically saying to us right now, my view of right overrides even community standards. This is the basis for the anarchy we're witnessing in America. It's all about my individual view of what's right or wrong. The third problem, we assume basically this, and if we ever get to a point where we start wanting to do something about it as a group, we assume that when we stop doing wrong, then we're right. You know, if we just all stop doing wrong, we would be right. This is the basis of so many rules. When people stop doing wrong, we think we can kind of make up these rules that will help them and keep them out of trouble, but making more rules in society always leads to more trouble. Tom Morris, who wrote a book, If Aristotle Ran General Motors, it's a really great read on leadership. He taught down the road a ways at Notre Dame. He said this about rules. He says, books of rules almost never help. The bad people will find loopholes and other ways around the rules. And the good people, who would do the right thing anyway, waste a lot of their time and energy checking what exactly the rules require before they act. Wait a minute. I've got to be sure this complies with Rule 37, Part B, clauses 1 through 3A. And then by that time, action is too late. Making many rules is self-defeating. Not doing wrong is not the whole answer for doing right. Righteousness is not about the absence of wrong as much as it is about the presence of right. So what is wrong? What is right? And what is righteousness? Let's take a look at these scriptures we've looked at so far. Judges 21:25 says, all the people did what was right in their own eyes. Proverbs 14:34 says, righteousness exalts a nation. Isaiah chapter 5 verse 20 says, you who call good or evil good and good evil. They're all three using terms, right, righteousness, good. These are three different terms written hundreds of years apart. They're not tied together by a strict definition, but they are tied together by the way that they would be lived out in the Hebrew community. The definition of right is not up to the individual. From a biblical perspective, there is no individual righteousness. There's no community righteousness either. We are just either living righteousness together, living it out, or we're not. The prophets never said, oh, get rid of all those people and send them to Babylon. They cried out, Lord, have mercy on us. They pleaded for the nation of Israel all the way through the Hebrew Bible in the personal plural. We, us, together, crying out for our land, even if the prophets had done nothing wrong. There is no personal righteousness or community righteousness. There's just righteousness. And we're either living right or we're not. So, this morning, I think for us, we may not be able to change the whole world and turn a ship on a dime when some things have been set in motion already, but we can still believe and we can still act on biblical righteousness. And if we do believe in biblical righteousness, then we have some obligations. First, we have an obligation to do right and to be an example. Mark Twain, who I mentioned earlier, he said, always do right. This will gratify some people and astonish the rest. Second, we have an obligation to be strong in the right. Be strong in the right. Despite all odds. This is not a popular thing to talk about today, but one of our nation's greatest leaders, Abraham Lincoln, said, let us have faith that right makes might. Right makes might. Did you know that came from Abraham Lincoln? And in that faith, let us to the end dare to do our duty as we understand it. Stand strong in the right. Our third obligation is that we need to speak about what is right. We actually need to speak. Athanasius, who was an early church father, helped the world to understand the Trinity. However, his views were not always accepted. In fact, people were dying in battle over various views. However, Athanasius understood what was right and spoke out. He said this, and oh, that the church would be able to say this. If the world goes against the truth, then Athanasius goes against the world. Will the church in America have the strength to declare that? As our praise team gets ready to return to the stage here, if you come on up, today may we remember voices from church history and American history. May we remember that they have given us a call to action. Righteousness is never a call to inaction. Righteousness is never established because we stop doing wrong. Righteousness is only established when we start doing right. Listen, the golden rule does not say, do not do unto others what you do not want them to do unto you. No, it is a call to action. Our Lord Jesus Christ says in Matthew 7:12, in everything do to others as you would have them do to you. May the Lord add his blessing to the word and bless our country.